Hello, it's Blake of Something Rotten fame. Guess what? I'm writing a book. I'm writing a book about Guitar Hero and Rock Band, no less. It's called The Oral History of Guitar Hero, Rock Band, and the Music Game Boom. An appropriate title if there ever was one. So Jacob announced his book a few months ago. We ran ads for that. A bunch of you helped pitch in to make that a reality, which was amazing. And similar to his book, I have turned to crowdfunding. I am working with the publisher Thames and Hudson and their vertical Volume to create kind of the ultimate Guitar Hero book experience. It's a bit of a interesting package. Right now, the book we're selling, of course, is, a novel. It's an oral history, as you have come to expect. There are plenty of great oral history books out there that you might have read by now, but ours comes in a few different packages. At least it does right now during the funding process. We have our deluxe edition and our special harmonic signed edition, which comes in a beautiful textured slipcase with a 5-color lining design. We're also doing die-cut color tabs on the page edges to mimic the 5 buttons of a Guitar Hero controller. The deluxe edition is signed by me. The harmonic signed edition is signed by me and 4 original members of the Guitar Hero team, 4 original legendary harmonics developers, which is pretty freaking cool if you ask me. That being Alex Rogopoulos, Aran Agozi, Greg LaPiccolo, and Ryan Lesser. The deluxe edition costs $80 and the harmonic signed edition costs $100. And I know those are steep prices. Those are for Guitar Hero heads only and Rock Band heads only, or dare I say Blake Hester and Something Rotten heads only, if there are any. We'll find out. But we also have a standard just $60 regular hardback version of the book. It has an exclusive cover, which is pretty cool. It's kind of our artistic take on the Guitar Hero gems falling down the track. That just comes with the book. If you're not interested in all the extra stuff, you don't even worry about it. So here's the thing. At the time of recording, at the time of publishing, there is only a little bit of time left to fund this book. If the book is not funded, it doesn't happen. It doesn't come out. It's the standard crowdfunding thing. I would love to write this book. It is a dream come true to even work on this project. And I really hope that one day this book will sit in living rooms around the world. So 2 final things before we get into the episode. This is, again, funding on Volume's website. You can go to vol.co and you'll find it there. It will also be in the show description below. Second, if you actually would like to read a pretty large chunk of this book right now, 34,000 words of it. Also in the show description is a story I published in 2021, The Oral History of Guitar Hero on Vice. This book is an expanded version of that story. It's about double the size of the original story. So you can read about half, maybe a third, we'll see how it works out, of the book right now. If you like it, please consider adding money to the funding page. And then, after interviewing however many more dozens of people, you will get the entire extra side of the story. So go read The Oral History of Guitar Hero now, and then let's fund the book. And then I promise I will write for you to read also the oral histories of Rock Band, Guitar Hero 3. I don't know. There's Guitar Hero Beatles. I think there's a Van Halen one. There was a Metallica thing. There's all kinds of stuff. We're going to write the oral histories of all of them. So everything you need in the show description below. Thank you so much. I love you. Hugs, kisses. Enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Something Rotten. This is the second episode of our Interesting Women Hearing Voices season. Last week...
Hold on, that's not true, because the next game, unless you know something I don't...
No, well, okay, we've covered 2 games that are Interesting Women Hearing Voices, and the next episode will be something completely different. But last week, we covered Indica, and today... we are returning to a series that we have covered in the past when there was only one game. Hellblade II is what we are talking about. Back to our Ninja Theory season for just 1 episode and 1 game. Blake, you missed Ninja Theory? Have you missed talking about them?
I thought I did. I was big excited for this game, Jacob. But it's classic SR. Blake didn't like the game.
Hey.
Here we are.
Classic SR. We'll get an interesting episode out of it anyway. Now, it is, we are recording, Blake, a little later than usual. I've got a glass of wine that I'm drinking. But we are recording at this time because our guest from literally the opposite side of the world is Kat from the Pixel a Day YouTube channel. And, woman doing a lot of stuff in the game talking scene. Kat, you forced your way lovingly onto our previous Ninja Theory season, and we are so glad to have you back in a proper episode.
I love talking my way onto podcasts. That's my thing.
When you think about it, it shows that you're more than qualified to talk on the podcast. But hold on, I'd like to point out there are probably a bunch of listeners who listen to that season who are like, "Who the hell is Kat?" Kat was on the bonus episode.
Wait,
so it was only on Nebula.
Or was it? I think it was the Q&A, actually. I think it was like a weird...
But we didn't...
Like,
no.
Yes, I was on the weird bonus one. Yeah. Wait, is this not a weird bonus one? Is this like a proper one now?
No, this is a...
Oh my gosh, I've been upgraded. How exciting.
You've been upgraded. You can be on the main feed now. We'll let you on the main feed.
Shit.
I am fact checking this. Let's see here. I will always take every moment to tell Jacob's wrong. Kat was on the bonus episode.
Damn.
Jacob, don't you ever fucking doubt me.
Oh, it was Blake that was right.
You hear me?
I will not.
Well, I cheers your wine with my glass of morning coffee.
A great combo.
I got my 2-liter of Canada Dry right here.
I don't know what that is.
It's seltzer water, sparkling water.
But it looks very refreshing.
It's been sitting on my desk for about 2 hours. It's actually very not refreshing. It's like flat and kind of gross now. But it's all I have. It's all I have.
Well, this is the Something Rotten podcast, so.
That's true.
That's exactly right. Last time you were here, I feel like we spent half the episode just asking you things about Australia. Which was so lovely for all of us. My question now is, in the year that it's been, what's going on in Australia?
What's going on?
I mean, is it winter? Is it cold?
The leaves are falling off the trees.
It's fall.
Okay, hold on. Is that true? I don't understand how... Okay. I'd like to preface this by saying I didn't finish college where I assume they teach you this one thing.
Time Zone 101.
I've always thought that when the Earth gets farther from the sun, that's what makes it winter. So how could Australia be having the opposite...
It's a mystery. I don't think anyone knows.
Season.
Okay. Sorry to be a buzzkill. I do know. The Earth stays a consistent distance from the sun, but the Earth itself is tilted. And so at some parts of the year, some of the Earth is closer to the sun and other parts are far away. But then as it orbits, the parts that were farther away get closer, which is why around the equator, it's always kind of warm because the middle is not as affected by the tilt. I'm pretty sure that's why.
I thought it was because the Earth got farther in December. But I guess then how would climate change work, right? You know what I'm saying? And the thing we know is it's real and it's true.
The climate change really works. That's actually, it's really good at doing what it does.
So I guess the distance from the sun would actually have no bearing on it. Okay.
Something rotten figures out science. Kat, usually I pull up our guests' Twitter or whatever just to be okay, what links are they sharing? What do they want to be known for? Yours has help support me so I can keep wasting my PhD to do this instead. What is your PhD?
I did a PhD in psychology is my background. So I did a PhD in kind of social psychology. I looked at whether religiosity and spirituality predict volunteering, time spent volunteering and motivations for volunteering.
Wow. So you're actually, we just thought you were a good, you're a fan of Ninja Theory, so this was good. But you're actually extremely qualified to talk about on Hellblade.
You thought that I was a professional fan of Ninja Theory, that was my field.
We didn't know you were a professional psychologist.
Well, I'm an academic psychologist. I'm in academia, so barely a psychologist, but I teach and do research and stuff.
Blake, did you know that both my parents have psych PhDs, and one, neither me or my sister have anything beyond a bachelor, so we might be like disappointments to them. But also, like,
wow.
That was where I learned, like, you can get a psych PhD and like not do what most people think of as like the normal psychology thing.
Did you know my wonderful partner Sam does have a psych PhD?
I did know that.
She's a doctor, which is crazy. And I couldn't even get my associate's degree in English when I went to school. So yeah, we're all doing great.
The Cat, follow-up question about your field. Have you played Indica?
No, it's on my list. There's too many good indie games that came out in like the last 2 months. I can't keep up.
Dude, nah, just play Indica.
All
it's
right.
the best one. It's so good.
It's
obsessed
like 4 hours long, so that's also a bonus.
And it's like kind of walking simulatory, right? And you know I love those.
And here's the thing, very obsessed with religion and psychology.
Oh!
Yeah.
You literally play as a nun who hears voices in her head.
Oh, I see the link now
Yeah,
with Hellblade. I see the link.
I mean, and it's what's funny is that the link was really, these were 2 games that Blake wanted to play when we were looking for a season that wouldn't require like a huge time commitment.
Yeah, I didn't know Indica had a voice that talks in her head until I started the game, and I was like, oh, what a lucky coincidence.
So Hellblade 2
7 years
is this weird, that's what I was going to say. This was the first game announced for the like new Xbox.
Right.
Do you remember that?
I was thinking about it.
Like it's so weird, and they had a trailer then that I think was, they literally didn't have any game at all. It was just kind of like their vision trailer. And then years passed, we didn't really hear anything. Then there was that second trailer with the cool, like, giant setting on fire scene, which is, in this game, almost exactly the same. And then years passed again, we didn't hear anything. And then it just came out, and it's kind of
and
like,
it was just like, hey, it's here.
Xbox's
it's here.
big game this
Yeah.
year.
It's been a long time. So yeah, everyone was really normal about it, and the expectations were just really, really normal from everyone.
Also somewhere along the way, Tamim, who was the kind of creative lead at Hellblade, just quietly left the studio, and they kind of said, like, months after the fact, they were like, oh yeah, Tamim hasn't been here for a while, but like, don't worry, we've got it covered. And like, that was strange.
That was so strange. I didn't realize, actually, until the credits. And the credits were rolling, and I was like, wait a minute. Where the hell's Tamim? And then I looked it up,
and he was...
No one knows where he is. He hasn't been seen near a game studio in years.
Hopefully someone
Presumably
knows where
his friends
he is.
and family
Yeah,
know where he is. He hasn't been kidnapped, but...
Yeah, and he was like involved in the beginning of this for sure, because like when you're reading about like how did they choose Iceland and stuff, they're like citing like Tamim was someone who found this interesting. And so it is just like this protracted development. Along the way, Ninja Theory was bought by Microsoft in one of the like many studio acquisitions. Technically,
and that'll probably be good for them in the long run.
Yeah,
No issues.
Studios that get bought by Microsoft are doing great. We know that they are also working on that game called Project Mara, which had a very abstract trailer.
That's not a game. That's a fucking Unreal Engine 5 project file, and that's all it'll ever be. Don't say that's a game.
I guess what was weird is they released a trailer for something that was not Hellblade 2 in the middle of the like really long development for Hellblade 2. And the other thing is, Hellblade 1 was this game where they were like, here's the thing, we can make like a game with AAA production quality with like 20 people for very cheap. And Hellblade 2 is like, now we're bought by Microsoft. We have 100 people at the studio. Most of them are working on this. Like, it's weirdly, there are a lot of things that they like talked about a lot in Hellblade 1. It's like, we're doing this because it's cool. And then like Hellblade 2, that changed a lot.
A lot happened in those 7 years. 7 years is a long time.
And it's like, obviously it's making any big AAA now takes a long time. Naughty Dog takes forever. Rockstar takes forever. What's the Rocksteady? Took 7 years making Suicide Squad. Like, these things take time, but especially for, as we will talk about, a pretty modest game in terms of scale, in some ways less complex than Hellblade 1. It is, like, I don't think any of us are on, like, the like, fucking game should have been way longer team, but, like,
it's weird. It's baffling that it's the same length. Yeah, the same length as the first game, with 5 times the studio stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I actually think the game should have been shorter. It's going to be one of my overarching takes.
I think the whole first chapter could have been cut out. I think they could have gotten to the point way faster.
I think one of my least intellectual criticisms of this game is every level overstays its welcome by 20 minutes. Like, every fight is too long, every puzzle is too long. It's like,
there are parts.
It's rough.
There are things that I like in its in the choices that it makes, but obviously, there are. It is just in a weird spot for this to be, in some ways, one of the most technically impressive games ever released. In other ways, this weird, almost tech demo-y thing. But before we get into that, I guess one of the things, Blake and I, when we finished Hellblade 1, I think we're surprised that the story ends with kind of a sequel tease. That, like, Senua looks at the camera and she's like, there's more stories where that came from.
Nick Fury walks onto the scene, looks at the camera.
She looks at the camera and goes, guess what? I'm mascot material.
Put me in PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. So were you, like, when you heard that Hellblade 2 was coming out, were you like, hell yeah, we did it, fam? Or just kind of like, Ninja Theory, I know and like you, so I'll go with whatever? Were you nervous about it?
Yeah, probably the second one you said. I mean, there was a lot of hell yeah, but just because I love the studio and I have full faith in them doing badass things and doing a good job no matter what their circumstances. I know their output quality is always high, and they've always been a really interesting and creative studio, so I was sure that they were going to do something awesome, even though I didn't really know what it was going to be, and nobody knew what it was going to be because they've never made a sequel before in their 20 plus years as a studio.
They've never made a sequel, and even though Hellblade 1 does end with this, like, Senua's got more adventures on the way, that is a game that very conclusively, it's like the plot of that game is like Senua needs to come to terms with her psychosis and kind of like grappling with what it means to her. Also, the loss of her lover and how that is all kind of like factored into everything. And so my reaction upon seeing like the first trailer for Hellblade 2 was just kind of like, what is there to do if they are keeping her character development from the first game? And I will say, I think that a fairly laudable thing that this game does story-wise is like they don't do the Metroid thing with her mental health where like she starts powered up and then like trips and loses all her items and then she's like bad again. Like I think that they actually do a pretty good job of not making her just having this kind of like debilitating condition be the whole focus of the plot. But then the question is like, well, what is the plot? And I think this game kind of struggles to answer that.
I agree. I think like I'm not like, I don't know, I'd have to go check the tape. I don't feel like I'm super hot. Well, Super Hot. Now that's a good game. Y'all ever play Super Hot? God, that game rocks. I don't feel like I was super hot on Hellblade, but like definitely appreciate Hellblade. and have like a fond enough memory of it, especially when I was playing this game. But like Hellblade, it feels like it has, even in the ways it meanders with like the puzzles and shit, it feels like it has a strong sense of self. Like it's like, this is what we are trying to do, and we're really going for it. And there's a lot of really interesting ideas there. And I think because, like you said, Jacob, you can't repeat that part and parcel in the sequel. Hellblade 2 doesn't really have much of a sense of self. I think Senua as a character has no charisma. She has no riz. So for her to just
Blake Hester, where's the riz? Is that going to be the title of this podcast episode?
I'm saying. No, this is just going to be Hellblade 2. That'll be it. But like, this game is like propping her up now as this like savior. And the whole time I'm like, why does anyone care about her? Why is anyone listening to her? She just kind of sits in a room with people and stares in the distance and looks kind of scared the whole time. And so, like, I guess I don't know what the message... Because Hellblade 1, it has such a strong message, right? Which is like, hold on, you're gonna get through it.
So you're saying Hellblade 2 made you appreciate Hellblade 1?
For sure. 100%.
Retroactively.
100%.
Well, I'll accept that. Hellblade 1 is like one of my favorite games of all time. I think it's one of the best games ever made. So
I just feel like I don't know what Hellblade 2, what my takeaway was supposed to be from it, other than they kind of made a worse game.
I have heard people say that too. I think I came out with a fairly good idea of what it was doing plot-wise and theme-wise. I agree it's not nearly as cohesive as the first game, but it does some stuff. I took some stuff away from it, but yeah, it doesn't hit the highs of the first game for sure.
Yeah, so I would love to hear, like if Hellblade 1 is, ultimately it is like Senua views these voices that she hears as this kind of like demon, this like rotten part of her, and is kind of like thinking that maybe she can do something to like grow past that, and then ultimately realizes that like there is no growing past it, but also that doesn't, like, the voices that she's hearing does not mean that she's like evil and cursed, and is able to kind of like view it positively, knows that even though Dillion isn't coming back, but whatever, there is a lot of stuff there. So I guess, Kat, what is Hellblade 2 about? Like, I know that's a big question, but
well, as the Hellblade expert, as the Ninja Theory expert, and that is my profession, paid profession. It's like the first game was very inwardly focused. She's fighting her own demons, she's fighting her own trauma, and the second game like takes that empathy that she's built for herself and then turns it outwards. So it's all about her helping others. So the first game was like her trying to survive, just survive, and had this real sense of desperation, because it was life and death. It was a one woman story. And then the second game broadens it out, turns it outward, and has her helping others. So it's really less about her helping herself and more about her using empathy to show others a new way of being and of community building beyond violence and trauma. So it's like she's spreading the message like a good little Nordic messiah.
Is it weird that one of those people is a slaver?
Well, he has an arc, doesn't he?
Yeah, but
but the slaver.
That's so crap.
But the slaver.
So I
you
think
cannot but a guy who takes slaves, Jacob.
Well, with the exception of the slaver, I think.
If you had a sucky dad, maybe you would have also been a slaver.
Lots of people have shitty dads and they don't have slaves, y'all. I don't know how to tell you this.
So I guess I think you are right. That sounds, like that very much makes sense as like the course for this game, and that's most kind of expressed through her. Where the game starts is she has basically like purposefully gotten captured by these slavers, and she's going to like go to where they're taking the people and presumably, I don't know, fight the slavers, get them free, whatever. But what the story kind of turns into is like there are a bunch of giants here. The giants are terrorizing the general populace, and everyone refers to Senua as being able to kill the giants, but that's not actually what she's doing. She is instead kind of empathizing with them, like diving into, like a Psychonauts level, she is like going into their inner thoughts and figuring out like what is the root of their pain, the root of their suffering. Yeah. And then through unlocking that, she's able to kind of neutralize the giant in some way.
But I think, like, you brought up Psychonauts, which I think is a good point of comparison, because I feel like Psychonauts 2, I've never actually played Psychonauts 1, like, does a lot of interesting stuff and has stuff to say. And I just, like, I feel like a lot of the stuff in this game just feels so basic. You know, and like, that's fine. Like, I don't know. Celeste did the climbing a mountain metaphor for anxiety, and we all loved that, I guess. But it's like...
And the first Hellblade is also not the most subtle piece of media out there.
Yeah, I just think for a game that is so joyless as this, and so... fun isn't the right word, but mechanically uninteresting, even compared to its predecessor.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. Yeah,
when the general writing and like messaging around its mental illness or self-forgiveness or all these things is so basic.
If you're gonna be joyless, if you're gonna be so joyless and you're not gonna have a strong gameplay mechanics thing, then the themes have to be really strong and the message has to be really layered and strong, like the first one was. The first one had like really high highs and low lows. It had all those emotional peaks and troughs, mostly troughs, let's be honest. This is the Something Rotten podcast. Yeah, Senua Sacrifice was totally rotten. It was a rancid game in so many ways. And like, this game isn't even
she
that
was
rotten.
literally rotting.
Yeah. I just think like there's nothing. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, if y'all found something meatier to chew on here. I played the game, I heard what it had to say, and none of it was worth thinking about. Like, I was like, okay, I'm sorry, Giant, that you're sad. I don't care.
I think...
And that's a bummer, right? I'm sorry, Chick. That's a bummer, because I was stoked for this game, and I was stoked to play something that looked this good. And instead, I was like, I'm just pushing this fucking thumbstick forward, and they're giving me some basic level Psych 101 crap here.
I think what's kind of... Honestly, it's almost more frustrating about this is I do think the game actually gets there in like literally its last 3 minutes, which is
sure,
is like weird because it almost feels like at the end you're like, oh, this is what the game should have been about. Because I mean, just to jump like all the way to the ending, Senua, she kind of knocks out this horrible kind of leader slaver guy. And she has kind of a confrontation with, like, you could take his place. You could be powerful. You know, you could be kind of a dictator, too. And then eventually has this introspection where, you know, for the whole time she's thought about, like, the darkness and as code for her mental illness, for her psychosis, as like coming from her mom, because we know that her mom also suffered from this, and so she feels like she kind of got it from there. And then it's like at the very end she kind of has the realization that it's like, no, the dark came from my dad, you know, that like the psychosis, the voices that I'm hearing are separate from my sense of like doom and kind of, you know, trauma that I've taken on and whatever. And like that stuff is not what I inherited from my mom. That's what I inherited from my dad. And that's like a genuine character realization that I thought was like really cool and moving. And then the game ends.
The thing is that she has that realization in the first game, though.
That is also true.
I mean, I liked the final boss as that kind of, but see, yeah, like I think I saw more in it than other people did. Like, like the whole bad dad thing. It comes back in the second game, but it's not just a repeat of the first game. Like it's more broad. It kind of has something to say about that at a level of I don't know, at that community level where you go into this village and you see that he's, this awful patriarch dude. He's not just abusing his son. He's like using his authority to like dominate and control a whole village and then raid other villages. I like what it's trying to do. It's like trying to talk about the same sicknesses, the same problems, but like at a little bit more of a macro level.
Yeah, and unlike the first game in which Senua is never able to like directly confront her father, we do get this scene of the guy's name is what's his name? Thorgister? The son of the slaver. It's like he does get to have the confrontation with his dad that Senua probably wishes she could have had some level of, and then having that conversation like go badly is again this like interesting reflection.
Go badly is an understatement.
On what maybe Senua yeah, goes about as poorly as it could have.
You know what rocks in this game though? That first big cutscene with the lady giant when you see her for the first time, it's the scariest thing of all time.
Oh, baby.
It was so sick. I mean, there are moments.
Yeah.
Brilliance
should
there.
we, should we talk about like the tech for a little bit? Because I do feel like it's a pretty important part of this game.
I mean, they're using Unreal Engine 5, made by hand by AJ Moser. And it's like, it feels like Microsoft and Epic had a big fat handshake that like Ninja Theory was just going to get as much support as possible to make this like the showcase of UE5. And it really is. They're using like the metahuman stuff, which I don't even totally understand what is, other than just like the most.
All I know, it's just like you just make a face look real good. Metahuman.
Yeah, it's like the most impressive facial capture technology in the world. I mean, UE5 at this point has fully transcended video games and is like becoming industry standard in the film industry for CGI and all that stuff. So this is the big video game push for this, and it's kind of the first UE5 game to this visual fidelity we've ever seen, other than that Matrix thing, which was more like just an experience. That was not a game.
Yeah, it's like the Matrix thing, and then it's like Fortnite has put in like UE5 like Lumen and whatever, which is this is using the same tech, but it's like obviously Fortnite is not trying to be photoreal. So
yeah, it and at times it is just a sliver below photoreal. I mean, it is unbelievable what some of the cutscenes look like. It is unbelievable what some of the just game looks like as you're playing it. I mean, it is like, it's technically impressive.
You can really see those Microsoft dollars at work. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say, nothing mechanically about the game feels interesting. So it's like
less than the first game.
I don't know. I feel like I feel like I got over the visual fidelity really quick when I realized how much of the game was just going to be holding the left joystick forward.
Yeah.
And even the combat feels like way stripped back compared to the first game. Like in the first game, you would at least fight more than one enemy at a time.
Yeah, and you had like a kick. You could.
Yeah, and this one you have to watch like mini cutscenes between every enemy.
Where's the Riz? Where's the kick?
Yeah.
Like the game feels... Exactly. Where are these things? It feels very stripped back in a lot of ways.
Okay. I want to bring back your "Where's the Riz" comment, Blake, because that is actually a perfect summary of how I feel about the mechanical design of this game. I mean, mostly it's just very competent. Like, let's be honest, the first game is not mechanically complex either, but it has these, like Senua's Sacrifice had these moments of absolute game design brilliance. Like the fight in the pit with the beast where
Yes.
the lights go out and then you have to use the audio to fight him,
Dude,
or like the final
exactly.
decision where you have to like take your hand off the controller and let yourself be defeated.
Yep.
Like those like the most of the game is not mechanically complex, but those bits shine so bright and are so inspired. It basically carries the rest of the game.
Exactly.
None of that here. Where's the mad genius?
Where's the Riz?
Yeah, I think I for me it is weird because it's like that mad genius is there. The place that I most find it is actually in the tech, which isn't just good looking, but I do think is like compelling in weird ways, in the same way that like when you watch an old movie and you see a crowd of like 1,000 extras and you're like, oh my god, like there were 1,000 people there, where like early on there's this scene where, and it is almost completely a cutscene, you like push up a couple times, but it's like Senua is like climbing out of the ocean, like up this kind of rocky cliff, and it's like she climbs that for real, grabbing onto rocks like in real time in a way that is like so laboriously animated, in a way that I have like genuinely never seen before. And like there's that scene in the game's least compelling environment, the cave, but like there is that scene where she's like she's in a thing that is so tight that it's like her head is flat on the ground and her nose is almost touching the ceiling. Yeah. And she's like pulling herself along, and it's like, this is not just technically impressive, this is performance capture, like ingenuity. Like I don't know how the fuck they got Melissa Juergens in a fucking space that tight, but like clearly something's going on, because like the fidelity of the capture is so good that you do have to think like they put her in a cave. And there are things like that are so just kind of like, they are so lovingly crafted technically that I did find it kind of entrancing to just be like, they're doing this, you know, like they are gonna show me her climbing this entire cliff in a way that I found compelling. But you're right, it's like that feels like it almost came at the cost of the previous game just had so many more ideas than this one. You just did so many different things that you don't do in this game.
I think just like, if I'm putting it as simply as possible, I thought that the game was so boring that like a lot of those moments didn't land for me. It's like, obviously I'm going to see that rock climbing in the beginning and be like, that's unbelievably impressive. But like the package it's in is so mind-numbing to me that it's like, it's so what? So what? It looks great. It is like, the one person who worked on this is smarter than I could ever hope to be if I lived a million years. But so what? Because like, I just don't feel like the game has something like interesting enough to do with that tech, or like interesting enough to say with all the visual flares they can do now. Like there's so many interesting ways they warp the world and make like geometry twist and float, and I kept just being like, how do I just get through this to get to the next 10-minute long cutscene where they say depression, it doesn't define you.
I'm with Blake. I'm sorry, like, Jacob. Two against one. I'm with Blake here. I didn't care about those moments where she's like slowly climbing the cliff or slowly worming her way through the hull of a ship, and you're just watching a woman wriggle really slowly through a really small space.
You really. I mean, I don't know, Jacob. I don't want to shit on something like clearly you like, because like that's unfair. I guess just like I wanted to be more in those moments. Does that make sense? Like I just couldn't. The game didn't feel like it gave me anything to actually care about or be invested in.
Yeah,
when
that
it
is
got to that point.
That is totally fair, and I think you are completely right. And it's like the enjoyment that I am getting out of this is, as someone who is interested in, like, my interest is video games writ large, where, like, I see, both of you talked about, like, not needing that first chapter of the game. I think the first chapter of the game was maybe my favorite because I found, like, the weather effects so compelling, where it was like, I have never seen someone emerge from the mist like that in a video game. And that is a very superficial thing to care about, but at the same time, like, this medium is built on kind of, like, making tech do things that are consistently, like, surprising us. And so even though ultimately I do want tech in service of a compelling emotional narrative, like, I do have this kind of, in the same way that, like, fucking Peter Jackson got obsessed with 120 frames per second, filming. And it's like, you watch that and you're like, well, you didn't make a good movie to put this in, and this just looks like a fucking soap opera with hobbits. But it's like, I understand, as Peter Jackson, like, someone who cares about movies as, like, as a medium, as a format, that kind of tech stuff is just, like,
for sure
moving in a way. And that is kind of, I would say that's the primary thing I got out of this game, which is a shame, because the primary thing that I got out of Hellblade 1 was an emotional story.
I 100% feel you. I wonder if I should have not played this game and just kind of watched a super cut of cutscenes and be like, wow, games have come a long way since Pac-Man.
And the fight scenes, the action scenes are so dynamic, and the use of music in the battles is so freaking cool.
They're cool.
Yeah.
They're just not fun.
Yeah, that's the problem.
But I will...
No, well, fun isn't the right word, because Hellblade 1 is not fun. They're not interesting.
I hear is, while I continue to be the Hellblade 2 defender, which is actually not, I think, what our positions are relatively on this podcast.
Within the subgenre, like, of talking about the tech, you are, yes.
Talking about the tech. Yeah. It's like, we talked about how I think that the combat is significantly less mechanically interesting than the first game. I missed the different kinds of bosses, the different, like, builds of enemies. I missed being able to fight multiple enemies at the same time. But at the same time, I will say that, like, this game has probably 5 combat encounters, like, throughout it. Like, it really does not have very many. And I find most of those more memorable than most combat encounters in most games. The fact that I could tell you, like, I remember that first fight with the Draugr where the, like, bonfires are, like, going off, and I separately remember the one in the caves where you're fighting all those, like, horrible little goblin men, and then, like, the ones where the Draugr are, like, invading that village and everyone's getting killed. It's like, I think that they do a really excellent job at, like, we talk all the time on this podcast of, like, could you make a game where you only have to fight, like, 3 people and that's an interesting game? And I think this gets pretty close in that, like, even though the fights are very long and you fight a lot of people, like, having the specific instances be so distinct and, like, set in the location that they're set in and whatever really does, like, I remember much more of the fights in this than I do in Hellblade 1, with the exception of the bosses that Hellblade 1 have that this game doesn't. So it's like, there are, and I think a lot of that comes from the tech and how good the tech is at, like, putting you in a place.
I agree. I think it's cool when you
so
fight
10 out
in
of
the
10.
fires.
We all agree.
Highly cinematic.
I think it's cool when you fight and the
I have
fire,
I
the
have
fire's
no
going
qualms about all
crazy.
that shit's really cool. They, like, upped the coolness of the combat so much.
It really is. I like a lot of the transitional moments when you load the next enemy,
and
where it's like,
and the transitional moments where you fly over, like, the entirety of Iceland. That is, again, it's like, that's just them showing off, but I'm like, damn, that's cool. I do love just, like, being able to see this whole landscape, which is so crazy looking, but is like accurate to what Iceland looks like, more or less. But I don't think it has a desert.
You're gonna lose your mind when you watch Planet Earth.
I was literally going to say, I think I get a similar level of enjoyment out of this as Planet Earth. Except Planet Earth they make storylines about those animals. You care.
Planet Earth is so sick, dude. God. We should do a Something Rotten season on Planet Earth.
Earth, the most rotten planet.
You think that's true?
Nah, surely Venus.
No.
All that gas.
Yeah.
That's true. But I just think at all the cosmos. Like, we're just thinking our solar system, but like, imagine. There's probably like a planet made entirely of methane or something.
There's like that Wall-E trash planet where the people left it behind and they're just like cubes of trash being built into skyscrapers. That's out there somewhere.
That planet exists.
I've never seen Wall-E.
Boy, great movie.
Huh.
Okay.
Do you ever think about the idea that if space is infinite and the amount of planets are infinite, then there are an infinite possibilities, which would mean there's an infinite amount of the Wall-E planet and they are real? Do you ever think about that?
Yeah, that there's if there are infinite planets, there's one where it's like everything has happened exactly the same way, except in this podcast, I hate Hellblade 2 and you're the one who's like, but the graphics are so good.
It also means infinitely the Simpsons are real.
The Simpsons are real.
And they're my friend.
Okay.
The fucking Giants, dude. Go ahead, Jacob. I'm sorry.
What I want to talk about is the big story swing that this game is taking, just in how it's told, is like there are a bunch of characters this time that you're like that are alive and you're talking to and are not like, you know, hallucinations by Senua. Kat, who did you like here? Did you like connect with anyone or find any of them like particularly interesting?
I loved them. I loved the guy, and then there was that other guy. Yeah, they were all great.
Let's see. I've got it. There's Fargrimir, who is the guy that you find who's like being held at the Draugr camp. There's Thorgester, the slaver's son, who is himself a slaver, and then there's Astrior, who is like the woman that you meet.
Yeah, as I said, I will defend the slaver storyline. I liked his arc.
Y'all are problematic.
Like,
dude.
do you think that if someone has like, if you met someone who is bad, is your like stance is like, well, you should kill them?
Depends on what you're doing.
He got better,
if
dude.
If you're a slaver, I might consider maybe we should kill the guy who
didn't learn anything
and
from
you might
this
think
game.
that emotionally. But you know that in order to build a more caring society, you do actually have to have empathy for the worst people and believe that they can be rehabilitated. Or else, what are any of us even doing?
I don't have to do that.
I think Blake needs to play this game again.
No, I played it enough.
Blake comes out in favor of the carceral state.
And it was Hellblade 2's fault.
Let's build prisons.
Yeah, there are characters. I don't have much to say about them. Yeah, there's that other guy. I don't even remember his name. He's just a guy. Nothing happens with him. And there's the chick, and nothing really happens with her. They don't really have arcs, to be honest, except for Thorfinn. I'm so culturally insensitive on the podcast. I cannot pronounce Nordic names, nor will I try.
I have a question that I've been wondering about. I think it's okay to make a joyless video game. Have we played any other joyless video games, Jacob? Like, I want to be like Manhunt, but it's like there were jokes in there.
I think
Call of Duty, World at War.
No, I mean, because that game was
Hellblade 1. Hellblade 1.
Yeah,
joyless.
and it's like I have played other walking simulators that are meant to be not at all fun and whatever. So yeah, go on.
That's fine. That's fine. However, based on the conversations we've been having here, that this game is joyless and not maybe doing much interesting narratively, do you think this game would have benefited from just a joke or two? not like Marvel level poking you in the ribs, but just like every once in a while, maybe a character would crack a fucking smile. Like, I feel like I really started to feel like it was a slog just listening to these.
Everyone's very
joyless
dour.
fuckers. Yeah, and I think it actually works against this game in a way that worked for Hellblade 1, which is a very dour game.
Yeah, because also in Hellblade 1, you actually got nice scenes with her and Dillian. Like, they were flashbacks, but you, like, saw what it was like for Senua to, like, have light in her life, to have someone, like, care for her and to care about someone. And it was this kind of, like, break from the misery that then made you totally understand, like, why she was so kind of broken over his loss, because it was like, that was good, you know. I remember that. And yeah, I think that this game, it seems to have taken on the tone without as much as of the purpose, because, like, there should be, especially when you've got, like, 4 people in your group, like, there should be some acknowledgement that, like, community is good, like, that we are like enjoying each other's presence, and it's good to care about people, because then, like, life can be fun. And, like, yeah, you're not getting that from this group.
Dude, tone without the purpose is such a good way to describe, I think, just my personal feelings on this game. It's like, it's wanting to be Hellblade without having what makes Hellblade worthwhile, you know? And I really think, even if it remained as shallow, a joke or two throughout this
have a
damn
nice little, like,
script,
a campfire scene
well, at
where
least I'm
they're
having
having
fun.
a conversation. I don't know.
Something. God, yeah. Like, I understand Senua can tame the giants, but, like, there's no part of me where I'm like, well, yeah, all these people would look to her as the leader. Like, she got no riz. She's no charisma, you know? Like, but the game is, like, positioning maybe she will be this, like, leader for the broken, the beaten, and the damned, you know? And she'll join the Black Parade. And I'm like, why? Why her? What about her?
Hellblade 3, Senua's Black Parade.
She's no Gerard Way, is what I'm saying. I don't get it. Am I nitpicking, Jacob? Or
no, I don't think you are. I think that it is a good, that in some ways I think that the original Hellblade was also a game that took itself very seriously, and you could feel that in a way that was sometimes to its detriment. That it certainly felt like a game that knew that it was doing kind of like big, important work. And because of that, it, like, held itself in this very kind of high esteem. But I also think it, like, mostly deserved it. I think that game, like, was doing some really interesting work that video games don't do. And so I was, like, you know, I was fine with them kind of doing their, like, documentaries on, like, here's the guy we talked to learn about psychosis, and here's all that, because it, like, you know, it felt like that. And this has, yeah, it has that same level of self-seriousness, if not more so, without kind of the richness of theme to
it has that same sense of self-importance, but it's just not as important a game.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like, I mean, they're really trying to go for it, right? Like they made, I don't know why I always pick on Celeste, a game I love, but they made Celeste, and it, you know, it's about climbing the mountain, and it's the metaphor for anxiety. We get it,
and
but,
also,
like,
Blake, and also being trans, very importantly,
and also being trans. That's right, but, like, come on, but, like, they have these mental health professionals that consult on these games. They're trying to accurately mimic, you know, through binaural audio, what psychosis is like. They're trying to visually represent what Senua might be going through. Like, they're putting all this money into it. And I think as I've gotten older and personally dealt with mental illness and had to wrap my brain around the fact I maybe have a more severe mental illness than I wanted to believe when I was younger. If you're going to make media about it, you got to have something interesting to say at this point. You know what I'm saying? Because it just doesn't feel like it's enough anymore. The damn cops are coming to get me. It sounds like my takes are too spicy. Let me let them pass.
Who called the video game police? Not me.
Yeah, the NYVGPD. Yeah, like I really think you do. Like I just don't think it's enough anymore. Like I don't think it's enough that Ninja Theory is like, look, we pumped more money into it. It's like you really need to like have something to say. Otherwise, like, what is this? It's set dressing.
They tried. I mean, I will, as the defender of the Hellblade II plot section of this podcast, I do think they really tried. I do think there were some good themes in there and some good messages, but they just don't hit as hard.
Well, and please, like, I'm not saying this in like a so prove it way, but like what like hit for you? You know, what were like the kind of like big scenes or big kind of moments of this game where you were like, there it is.
But they have the overall theme of her helping others, right? And using her newfound knowledge to help others and to build community. And then there's like people say that the giants don't, and her fight with the giants don't represent anything. And I disagree. I think like the first giant represents grief turned rotten, and then the second giant represents shame turned rotten. And I feel like those were the same things that she fought and struggled against and defeated in the first game, so she can recognize them and defeat them in the second game. And then, you know, that the final giant kind of represents her dad, and then like toxic patriarchy sort of thing. I think there are some good themes in there about like how we kind of break a cycle of violence and fight these really destructive, ambitious forces trying to use fear and violence to divide us. You know, there's stuff in there. There's stuff in there.
For sure. I think you're onto something. I wish playing it I would have been more receptive to that.
And it is, it is hard with these things because it's like how much a particular piece of media speaks to you, especially when it's about something like mental health, is such a factor of kind of like where you are in your life, how much you've heard people talk about it. I think, again, going to Celeste, I don't think that game is, presenting a particularly novel way of thinking about anxiety, but I also think that the game's really good, and I think that a lot of the audience who played that game was probably pretty young and maybe hadn't seen a lot of like media about anxiety or whatever, and like hadn't felt spoken to in that way. And I think that we are all people who have like spent a long time interacting with media that somehow talks about mental health and whatever, but like I also think it's really possible that like there are people who have not kind of like been exposed to the same amount of stuff, have the same kind of like tiredness with retreading these themes. That is not to say that like any of our criticisms are invalid. It is just the kind of like the subjectivity of experience. It is very possible for me to believe someone being like super emotionally touched by the themes of this game, but it does feel like that would require relatively, being kind of new to these sorts of discussions. I think if you have read other books or seen other movies that are dealing with things like shame and grief, there's not going to be a lot like novel here. But like also I think that for a long time, there are a lot of video games that don't try anything at all, and so like I don't want to give Hellblade 2 too many points for doing that, but I hate to just say that it sucks and it's doing nothing when there are so many games that I think are like actively bad.
Sure. I think it's so like I feel like just the past I don't know how many years at this point it's been so in vogue to do just like allegories for mental health that it's like it feels so rote to me now. And it's like, I don't know, I watch a lot of shit and read a lot of shit and play a lot of shit, so maybe someone else is going to be coming to it with fresher eyes and a fresher perspective than me.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of people, some people call this game a masterpiece. Some people gave it 5 stars. I mean, there are glowing reviews out there.
Sure.
I will say though,
Sure,
like
sure.
I feel like my reactions were mixed. I understand why people would love the game and why people would not like the game at all. I don't quite understand the extreme ends of the spectrum, like the responses that were either I hated this game, like I don't get that response. It does a lot of things really well. And I also don't get the like it's a masterpiece, 5 stars, 10 out of 10. Like the first game was that. This game is not as good. I don't know. I wouldn't give it 5 stars.
You know, and
but yeah.
To this game's credit, you know, it is in some ways the millionth game to talk about shame or guilt or whatever. It is probably, I don't know, the second mainstream game to talk about psychosis. You know, like if you are actually someone.
Indica. There's 3.
Does Indica?
That's not a.
I guess
that's not a AAA game.
That's
though.
not the real devil, Jacob.
Oh, okay, that's true. I mean, there are other games that you hear voices in, but like I do think specifically from the perspective of someone with psychosis, which is not me and not most of the audience of the game, but I do think the ability to kind of use the sense of empathy that you have gained from that experience, not only can it like not hurt you, but it can actively help you to empathize with others. I like, you know, that is a relatively unique message in its specificity, even though the more general message is one that we've heard. You know, I don't know. I don't know why I don't want to completely write this game off as like rote, even though I think that a lot of what you're saying is totally true about it.
Sure. So I looked it up. Games about psychosis.
Blake, I also Googled this. A lot of the answers, if they're true, they're not good. Like Dead Space.
The Town of Light I reviewed for GameSpot in 2017.
I've never even heard of this game.
It's one of the worst games I think I've ever played. But I guess that was. I remember a woman gets a lobotomy in that game, and that's about all I remember. Okay, here we go. This comes from r/gaming suggestions.
I'm on the same thread, yes.
Games that simulate schizophrenia / other mental disorders. Someone's saying Night in the Woods. I don't remember.
What?
That's just someone being like, well, it talks about mental health in that game.
Alice Madness Returns.
I mean,
Layers of Fear 1 and 2.
It's like if your options are Alice Madness Returns, Dead Space, Silent Hill, and then Hellblade, it's like I do think that Hellblade is going to be pretty meaningful.
I don't know. Lisa the Painful.
That game that people are always telling us to play.
No, we're not going to. But the real answer is 1990's Psychosis, a side-scrolling shooter type game for the TurboGrafx 16 and PC Engine. It was released in 1990 by Naxat Soft, which also released the games Alien Crush and Devil's Crush.
Sounds great. Either of you ever played Milk Inside a Bag of Milk Inside a Bag of Milk?
Oh yeah, that one's kind of almost
it's a cool
psychosis.
It's a cool game.
Yeah.
Sorry, say that again?
Kind of psychosis-y. Yeah. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that one.
What the fuck is this thing?
Maybe we should have front loaded this at the beginning of the conversation, but like all of my comparisons to Hellblade 1, I just want to make it clear, Hellblade 1 is like one of the best games ever made. And when I say that Hellblade 2 doesn't compare to the first, I mean, it doesn't, like, it's not as good as the first one.
You've got a very high bar.
Just understand how high of a bar that is. Hellblade 2 is still a very good game, I think. But
I think the thing that I missed most from Hellblade 1 was, and I understand that I think you're totally right, that game is about introspection and this game is more about, you know, spreading yourself out to help others and whatever. But like, I just like the things that you going through Senua's life is so compelling in that game, of just seeing it's like gradually uncovering more about like her relationship with Dillian and her relationship with her father and her relationship with her mother, and like what, you know, what moments that she like felt okay and then kind of like, you know, had it all come crashing back down again. And I think that part of the you know, what's a shame about this game is that like that's kind of what the giant sections are trying to do, but Hellblade 1 devotes hours to it, and the giants you kind of get like 10 minutes maybe on each of them. And so I just feel like if it is going to be about I almost wish it was about like one other person, you know, when we were able to like go as deep on them or something, because I just feel that you know, the places that Hellblade was able to find so much kind of like emotional purchase was just going like further and further and further into like what Senua's life had been like up until the point that we met her. And the kind of generality of what we learned that the giants went through, they just don't really hit the same, you know, the same emotional buttons for me.
I mean, each one literally gets a 2-minute backstory delivered by voiceover, and that's it.
Yeah.
I'd like to take a moment to talk about all the cutscenes with the first giant, though, which are so fucking cool. Her face is all upside down and shit, and she's doing London Bridge or whatever. Like, she walks on all fours, like Exorcist style. It's so scary and so cool, and it was the highlight of the entire game for me was this Giant's 2 cutscenes. I loved them. Thought they were so cool.
I like called Annie in when that was happening. I was like, look at this.
My moment was in the first fight with the Droiga. I now know it's pronounced. Yeah, when like she starts fighting them, I believe it's the first fight with them, and everything's kind of burning and smoky and hazy, and then when the fight happens probably is when one of them runs up to her and he kicks her, and at the same moment he kicks her, the music kicks in. Oh my god.
Yeah. I really liked well, I didn't like the level very much, even though the cutscene was great at the end of it, with the first giant where you're running and the big punctuations in the song, or when the lava comes. Oh, it's so cool. But I also like the recurring motif on Something Rotten of Jacob making his poor, wonderful partner run into his office to watch whatever video game he's playing, the same way I used to do with my dad when I was playing like Kingdom Hearts.
Blake, that's true love. And one day you'll live with Sam and you'll be calling her in when there's a big freaky giant on the screen.
That's not true, because all the games Sam plays are just games I've already played. I'm like, Sam, yes, I've played Immortality. There's a spooky lady in it.
No, I'm saying, but you'll call her in when something happens.
No, that's not true. I don't play video games unless it's for this podcast.
Genuinely, my love language is showing other people media. That is not a joke.
My love language is like saying I love you.
Acts of service.
Darling. Acts of service. Yeah. Picking up litter on the side of the road, acts as community service.
Let's see. There are other specific moments that I want to talk about. I do think it is, after I've heaped so much praise on the tech of this game, something that I was thinking about is like, there are sections of this game that feel very tech demo, in that like, it seems like one of the things that Unreal 5 is really good at is like desert environments. And when they were in that like deserty environment, I was like, I remember I saw them show off Unreal 5 with almost exactly this scene. And I think that might be in years to come, we'll think about that. However, this is very cool. I was watching, they did not do nearly as many development diaries for this game as they did for Hellblade 1, but they did a couple, and I watched them. And one of the coolest things was that they made Senua's whole costume for real using like period appropriate stuff where they were like sewing hemp and like doing leather work and stuff, and then they like scanned Melissa Juergens in full makeup in the full costume into their like crazy, billion K rig. And I was like, that is so cool that like they showed someone like actively aging the leather so they could put it on her and scan it in. And I was like, that's awesome.
They also had that one where they talked about the photogrammetry, where photogrammetry used to be like, we took a really high-res picture of a rock.
Yeah.
And now it's in Star Wars Battlefield. Pretty cool, right? Or Resident Evil 7. I remember they did photogrammetry of food that looked real nasty. And I was like, pretty cool, right? And this one, they're like, we did photogrammetry of Iceland, the country. And I was like, right on, dude. Cool shit. It's real sick. They were just like, we got a drone and we fucking photogrammetized the whole damn thing. I don't think that's true. I think they did like
they did sections of land.
Yeah,
they
country.
did.
It couldn't have been the whole
Not
country.
the whole of Iceland, obviously.
But it was no.
Yeah.
But
hey, I don't know.
It was, I think those flyover sections were kind of them showing off, like, look how much we fucking scanned of this, dude.
They're like, Microsoft owns us. They got that flight simulator. We just Control-C, Control-V part of Iceland into the game from there.
Sorry, I just got 2 texts from Annie that said, all caps, true love, and then she said, I love big freaky giant thing in Hellblade 2. So... shows y'all.
There we go.
Also, she's hearing 1/3 of this podcast.
There we go. Sam, really, Sam. I've started bringing Sam up more on the pod.
Yeah, Kat, this is now a wife guy podcast.
I'll
where
show
we
myself
just talk
out.
about our partners.
Yeah, neither of us are married, by the way, but we are wife guys. But I've started bringing her up more on the pod because I love her to death. Also, because she gets so excited when she's brought up on the pod, she listens to it. She refuses to listen to any episode from before our relationship started. So
yeah, well, what if you talked about another woman? Uh-oh.
Hey, I might have.
I don't think you did.
But she texts me on her morning commutes when she hears her name brought up in the podcast. So there you go. That's one of her favorite things. Also, one of her favorite things is my undying love and affection, of course.
I won't bother bringing my boyfriend up because he won't listen to this.
What the hell, bro? Listen.
Is he a gamer?
He
a
plays
gamer?
a lot of Rocket League and other select games that I tell him to play.
We're doing a Rocket League season next season, so we can have him on the podcast.
He was a StarCraft bro in the day. He got me into it.
Woo!
And we play other little games like with friends like Lethal Company and stuff. But yeah, it's mostly every night Rocket League. Trying to get up to champ. Yeah. So I get updated on all the levels. So I think he's on like Diamond 3 right now. Trying to break into that tier, the next tier. You just can't do it.
Did he play the Fortnite racing game that Psyonix made?
No. We did see that, but no, I think he's just about the classic Rocket League.
It wasn't good.
Super
Well,
good.
that's good.
He didn't miss out on anything.
I disagree. I completely disagree. It was good as hell. I loved it for the 20 minutes I played it at a preview
Just for a
event.
second, I thought we were going to have a
Bright and early
genuine
morning.
disagreement on this episode.
I thought it was good. Anyway, Hellblade 2.
I will say, Jake, when you were talking about like how it feels a tech demo, it does feel very tech demo at some spots. And then I was also struck by the fact that at other points, it just feels a little unfinished. It feels like an unfinished game. Like there's a 20-minute long section in a cave where there's nothing. It's just a plain old cave. It's just a darn brown old cave. That felt unfinished. Like just
and there's also that
art,
forest
style. The forest where they just walk through it and nothing happens. It's nothing.
Yeah, and it seems... Here's what I thought was going to happen with that forest section. It seems like they set up like everyone is going to experience the world how Senua experiences it, and she will be the only one who's like equipped to like get through. And then like that happens for like 20 seconds, and then they're just like done with it. And I was really excited about the potential of, of like what that was gonna mean. And it just, yeah, it feels like they are. I said this on MinMax the other day when I was talking about Hellblade, but like it feels like they are so constrained by their decision to make this the best looking game ever made that they just like can't do stuff. It's like they can't have a boss that has 4 legs like in Hellblade 1, because like building a new rig for that in this fidelity would be impossible. And they have like 3 puzzles, because it seems like having more puzzles, or maybe they just decided that people hated the puzzles, which like I kind of did, but I don't think that they're better in this. They almost feel worse because they're so like they're so low effort to get through them.
I didn't like the environmental puzzles at all. I really liked them in the first game. I will defend the environmental puzzles of the first game to my dying breath. I thought they were great. Even the little bits where you got to look at the staircase from the right angle and stuff. I love that shit. I love it.
No,
yeah, I love it.
No. when I walked into that forest, I said, "Oh God, there's gonna be so many dumbass puzzles in this fucking forest." And I tell you what, I was relieved when I got through that forest and nothing happened. I was like, hell yeah, don't have to pull up the walkthrough video.
If you're gonna, yeah, like the environmental puzzles in the first game, they had something. The first time they did, they're like finding the runes. That was cool. And then the Valravan sections in the Forest of Illusion, where you got to look at the world through the archway and look at what's changed, and then walk through. That's so cool. I really expected that with 7 years, okay, maybe they weren't working on this game for that entire 7 years, but a good 4 or 5 years maybe, they could have come up with something better than that. Some bonkers illusions, puzzles, some sort of brain-breaking stuff.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think one of actually the best indications of them not having a clear idea what this game was going to be is if you think about that first teaser, like the most interesting thing about it is Senua is in like full war paint, and it's like it looks like she is like leading some sort of whatever.
It's like a weird Sepultura music video. It's nuts. She's in that war paint at the end of the game.
No, she is in. So it's like that first trailer. She's in the war paint. She's like yelling. We're like, oh my god, a new side of Senua. Like, oh my god, what is this gonna look like? And then she's in it so briefly at the end that it really feels to me like the dev team were like, fuck, we put that in a trailer. We gotta have that. Forgot. Like, that paint is such a sick design. We have to show it. And it feels like a totally abandoned plot line to me.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a bummer, man. I was really, Jacob, I feel like we talked about this game for a whole year. We were really excited about it. Indica proved you can make a very clunky, unfun game about a lady with a voice in her head, and it can be great. Like, that game reminds me more of Hellblade 1, like the highs of Hellblade 1 than Hellblade 2 does. That's disappointing. I wish this would have been a different conversation.
I wasn't as disappointed as I feared I would be. It definitely wasn't the worst case scenario in my head. Out of all of these 7 years of totally normal expectations and worries and fears and hopes and dreams of this game. But also, it's not as great as I would have hoped.
I think it falls much more into disappointing than bad for me. Because I will say, I didn't dislike almost any of my time with this game. I did not find it nearly as boring as you did, Blake, and I was compelled by a lot of it, even if that was just the power of images on screen, of which I am very susceptible to. But like, I do think that Hellblade 1 was strong enough that you want to feel like, man, they found their stride. Like, this Hellblade 1 was a big swing, and in Hellblade 2 they have just like sharpened their kind of like emotional whatever like a razor's edge, and instead it feels not that. It feels that they maybe got overwhelmed by the idea of the tech to the exclusion of everything else, or just kind of, I wonder, and maybe this is, not fair to wonder or whatever, but like, I wonder if they got a year or two into this, realized that maybe they didn't have that much else to do with the Hellblade idea, but felt kind of like beholden to it rather than starting a new IP in which they could like explore more. It's like, I would not be mad if Ninja Theory just decided to be like the team that makes really serious walking simulators about important stuff. Like that's fine with me, but this feels like a really serious walking simulator that doesn't quite have a grasp of the important stuff, and I think that's part of the disappointment.
And it like the first game felt like a really nice mix of independent and AAA in that like AA space, where it was really cool and experimental, and it wasn't polished, but God, it was really special. And then this one just kind of feels more AAA, like which is bad, because I have a AAA prejudice, and I don't really care about polish and tech. So, that's like a negative in my books, really.
It's like what a heavy cost pursuing AAA comes at, because it comes at like all the kind of weird things that you might do with your game if you didn't have to have that level of polish. I think we're basically done talking about Hellblade 2. This has been our episode on Hellblade 2. Thank you all very much for listening. Kat, thank you so much for being on. Blake, we got to tell the people what we are doing next week, which was really me asking, hey, can we do these two games? Because I want to talk about them.
Tell me, because I don't know what we're doing next season.
It's the same
or
season.
Next
technically.
episode. Yeah.
We are going to play The Exit 8 and the new game that just came out, which is called Platform 8. These are two different games. They take probably a total of an hour 45 minutes to play through. They're like very light horror. They're creepy, but not like overtly scary. And I'm really excited to talk about them. Two different games. They're each like $4.
Listener, this is a 4-game season. Jesus.
Yeah,
I just heard about Exit 8 and put it on my wish list
Nebula.tv/somethingrottenpodcast.
How exciting. I'm going to listen to this episode.
There you
I'm going
go.
to listen to the shit out of that episode.
And until next time, thank you all for listening. Sometimes you just got to be compelled by really good graphics. That's my takeaway from this episode.
You don't got to do that.
Bye.
Bye everyone.